Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Trey Fan Podcast. I'm very excited for my next guest. You probably noticed him that he was in a really well-known film, Spider-Man: No Way Home. Also starred as the Amazing Spider-Man. He was stunt double for Andrew Garfield. None other than William Spencer. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem,
Yeah.
no problem. How do you think of my intro? I think that was a pretty good intro. Not bad, right?
I think that's no, I think you really covered it. And I actually do think saying the last movie first is most important. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because there's people like the timeline of things, what people care about currently, because you always forget this. Like whenever you're born, you're like, oh my God, people are born after that. People are born after
Yeah.
2010. Like it kind of blows your mind that you do kind of like want to really start most current event and then go back because otherwise people are like, I don't know about that movie, I don't care,
It
so
stays in people's minds. I think like when you put up something that's more recent in their work and stuff. I think that's what it is.
yeah, I think that's super smart to do. And I've had to learn that because for me, my memory for things I really care about is very long, where other people's are like, dude, just tell me the last five. Whoa, so I've like tried to get up on that and think about it like that.
That's
So
really dope, man. Once again, thank you for taking the time to do this. It's a honor. I really appreciate it for this. And let's get right into it. Obviously, I you were you're a stunt man, and I wanted to know like how did you get into acting and where did that start from?
you know what, for me it always started what I think my first original things that I really loved was of course Jackie Chan. And I actually used to have a this is so hilarious. My friend Paul, when I was a kid, he let me borrow a VHS of not the movies, but like I don't know, however many 50 kung fu movie trailers.
Oh wow.
Like just the trailers. So I would just get hyped trailers back to back of seeing the most hype part of like kung fu movies and stuff. And I just, as a kid, I connected to that a lot because I think, I think Asian culture in general, like the mystique of it, I think is really beautiful. I think the ability for, in America, whatever people, it's cowboy culture where everyone's like, I don't know, just jump
Yeah,
on the horse and see if you can do it. People don't like hone skills. And if they do hone skills, it's a very secret kind of like it's over here, don't tell anyone. Where in Asian culture, from my perception of it as a kid, I really thought about it like, wow, as a culture, like being skilled is normal. Being talented, knowing martial arts or whatever within the culture, it's so seeped into like, and if you think about it, back in the day, it would make sense that if you were at war all the time, if you were always fighting over land or always protecting yourself, the whole culture, everybody would be like, yeah, oh, you know how to fight. You know why? Because I want to live. And so I liked that element when I would watch those movies, that it felt very normal. And here in America, it just feels like, yeah, I don't know if you want to learn karate, that's cool. That I just saw it and was like, yeah, I think that's how things should be. So it made me want to start practicing martial arts because it was no one around me did it, nobody cared, whatever. And when I started doing that, I just realized from watching those movies that you could make such a bigger impact with things if a lot of people, I'd go and I'd see someone at my martial arts gym or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, that's really cool. This guy's here to teach us one time. But then it was over and his impact was just right here, right now. And
for
so
sure.
with movies and stuff, I think I got into sort of wanting, it's funny for me because I guess to try to answer your question in a broader sense than maybe you asked it, is that I saw what entertainment was and I was like, if this makes me feel this good that when I go to school on Monday morning, I'm not hating life because I just watched all these sick trailers, that I want to do that. So I never divided up. Like I never was like, all right, so this person's a director, this one's a writer, this one's a producer, this one does like, the props, and then this guy is the actor. I never divided it up because when you're a kid and you make stuff in the woods,
Yep.
you make whatever you're gonna make. You're like, yeah, we're making a movie today, and you're not like, well, hang on, what you doing? You're like, I don't know, we're making a movie. So my sort of getting into acting and stunts and entertainment was in the broadest sense of I just want to entertain people. Like when I saw people like Jim Carrey, like how like hilarious
Yeah.
physical comedy he was. He just like sure, his face is super rubbery and whatever else, but his actual physical comedy was like Buster Keaton back in the day, where he's just like falling all the way down the stairs and making it funny. Same with Jackie.
Yep.
He's an incredible martial artist, but he also just, he's like understood that fighting and being a tough guy are not like, that doesn't comprise the
Yeah.
whole world. That's not what everyone is. That just happens to be a part of. And when you're really gnarly, you'll do
Yeah.
something super gnarly and also make it funny. That's how gnarly you are. Not, he's just a silly guy. You're like, no, he's incredible that he can fall down the stairs, stand up, and make a funny face. And so I was just so impressed by that it made me want to like continue that feeling. The same way when you see Michael Jackson do the lean or the moonwalk,
Yep.
there's something about that that makes you go, oh my gosh, today doesn't suck. I just watched the coolest thing. That my broadest version of like wanting to get into acting and stunts and be in entertainment was just to create that feeling for people on Monday morning when they're like, man, today sucks. Oh my gosh, did you watch Tommy Boy? And then like just quoting movies all day long to your
Yeah.
friends. It might be the best thing ever because you're 8 hours and you're like, I'm in a factory, and you're like, thank God that movie exists so I can think about it. And I just wanted to be a part of that super, super badly.
That's so cool, man. And I understand what you're saying too, because like you said, like with those actors in particular, they were able to tell stories by their body without even saying something, which is so
Yeah.
captivating. And obviously Jim Carrey was like a master of that, like you said, right?
Yeah.
So obviously you end up becoming a stunt double and a stunt man. And
Sure. And it's funny, that path was actually me becoming a stunt double was when I was a kid. And I think I can tell this story now as a cautionary tale and also as a, hey, it's okay tale, because when I was a kid, I had a family friend who was an actor, and we were from the country. My dad was like a police officer, and we lived very much in the country. We didn't really interact with like the arts at all. My brother was an incredible artist, could draw anything, but the actual arts, my dad was like a workman. So anything that was hard work or whatever was awesome. And you worked all day. And then maybe if you had a little bit of time, you could do, a little bit of art at the end of the day, but mostly it wasn't super valued. And so this family friend that was an actor, we remember he's like, yeah, I'm going to get into him. And he would always talk to us about what he was going to do or whatever.
yeah,
But none of it ever came to fruition, and none of it. And it always felt a little bit like, wait, are you just saying that? Or do you really do that? That it gave me a false sense of acting. And it made me kind of go, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. That feels like it's not real. And not to throw this person on the bus, because I think without dreams, like whatever program this guy was on, wanting to be Kurt Russell or whoever he really wanted to be at that time period, he was probably trying his best and in his heart. And I think your dreams keep you going far past what reality can do for you, because you're like, well, dude, I live in Texas. This is what it is. There's local plays and stuff, and I think glamorizing it, not good. I think having a dream to be an actor for a really good reason and to like make people's lives better and like enrich them somehow, awesome. So moving forward, I never really did any theater. I never did anything like that because I had this weird bad taste in my mouth that was presented to me. It wasn't on purpose. The guy didn't mean to. It was probably my own negative outlook on it that I actually was like, ooh, I'm going to put that over there. I'm a pretty shy person anyway. And the acting, or especially theatrical, like actual theater, I didn't totally connect to it, where I was like, I don't want to cry about it yet.
Yeah.
Like I don't my whoever I am and whatever that is are far from each other. My relatability to want to portray that to people for a good reason, my emotional intelligence just wasn't there yet at that time. So moving forward, I just thought, hey, what's the next best thing to that? Which is, if you watch Jackie Chan, his movies are, in my mind, and this is just my opinion, they're 3/4 stunts and 1/4 acting. And I thought, oh, that's right. This guy's just doing all the stuff with his body. And then when he needs to say something or he needs to have a moment, he will. But otherwise, he's doing. He's not being. He's doing. He's doing stuff. He's saving stuff. That I related to that more. And it really helped me because I was super shy. I just very insecure about like who I was or what I thought was cool. I'm not sure what's cool, but I don't know what it is. And please don't ask me, that type of feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just happens that way sometimes with kids as you like are growing up trying to sort out like who you are or who you think you are, or bigger picture, who you want to be.
Yeah.
So I basically, when I got out here, I just knew that it was much more interesting and entertaining to want to be in movies than not do it. I had no clear cut goal. I wasn't like, yeah, just because I just thought, well, I can get into stunts, I can skateboard, I can do these other things. I've mimicked Jackie Chan in some way. I've like picked up what I thought he was putting down was like, cool sequences or things that I go, oh, this is what they do in action movies. But I'd never really trained specific things. I just knew that that's sort of what I was into. I would put it into my skateboarding. Like, my last couple of years of high school, I finally learned flips like
Yeah.
off of a trampoline. And so I would just go and do and parkour and all those things at this point. And this is probably dating me. It doesn't exist yet at all. I just me
Yeah.
going, my brother used to do flips when I was a kid, and now I do flips. And I jump off stuff, and then people are like, oh, people don't do that. People snowboard. People fly off big jumps because my friends were like sponsored snowboarders, and my
Oh wow.
my older brother's friends, they were all sponsored snowboarders, never summer and all that. So I would see that stuff, but I wasn't like, oh, I just want to snowboard. I would be like, well, maybe I'll practice the snowboard. So I'll try the snowboard flips just here. Or I'll just do them over stairs or whatever, so that when I snowboard, I'll be ready. And so I was like almost training for something. And that's how some of my style developed. I trained for, if I ever try this, if I ever, like snowboarding or wakeboarding or skating, like, oh, I'll get good at these other skills that are surrounding. I was so scared skateboarding that I would practice falls as I was skateboarding, because I was like, well, as I roll up to the set of stairs, I'm so terrified. What happens if my board shoots out? Do I run down the stairs? Do I fall? So I
Yeah.
practiced all these stunt skills accidentally as I was trying to get good at the thing I really wanted, which was skateboarding, because my older brother had got me into it and I
Yeah.
really respected it, but it also terrified me at the same time. So kind of rounding the story back to what I was saying is just that I kind of picked the stunt path because I saw Jackie Chan, and in my mind, because I remember the story about him fighting Bruce Lee. He was just a random stuntman in Bruce Lee in
Yep.
Enter the Dragon, right?
Yeah, I remember hearing about
That
that.
I just thought, what's that?
No, I said I remember hearing about that as we're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's sick because I mean, there's still friend. I mean, there's a whole story behind that, which is awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Both for Jackie and for Bruce Lee. But I basically saw that, and in my mind, my thoughts are much broad. Like how I interact with the world isn't really divided up, and people go, if you want to be on this path, you do this. You want to be on this path, you go to college, you do the. My brain's not really like that. My brain does broad ideas, and then I just kind of zero in or narrow in on what I want or think I want in a much broader. You're like, I'll just do it. And everyone's like, oh, you need to learn this, this, and this. I'm like, yes, I'll just do it. And so I kind of go towards the light of what I want. And then later on, I'll kind of hone my skills and go, oh, I got pretty close, but I actually do need these couple of things that they were
Yeah, for
telling me
sure.
about earlier. And then I kind of circle back and do that. But with what I wanted, I just thought, hey, stunt work for me. I see Jackie Chan. He looks like he started out as a stuntman and then basically just got so good at what he was doing and was so awesome to work with or whatever that one day someone said, hey, man, you're an awesome stuntman. We should give you your own movie. It'll be funny. Like, so, hey, the actor is sick today. So, just do this scene for us. And I thought it was a very like normal and natural inclination, and also just like evolution to, oh yeah, let's give you a movie. Like I just thought that was a thing. I didn't realize when I got in that like this is stunts, this is acting, this is producing, this is writing, and you better pick a lane. Like I just didn't.
Yeah, that there was like
My
a whole
brain's
different
like,
process. That's like
yeah, I just don't really like to organize things unless I must. I just don't. I don't know why. So when I got in, I never thought, hey, I don't want to act. I just saw people like Jim Carrey, Johnny Depp, and Edward Scissorhands,
yeah,
these
yeah.
really cool, quirky characters that I just thought, oh, whatever, I'll just meander. I'll get into stunts, and then at some point, I'll just become, that guy. It can't be that hard to just kind of swing over one notch.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what originally led me into it. The feeling of being too shy to want to act, like just immediately, like, it's me. And there's another thing too with my family is everyone is very skillful. My two older brothers and my dad and my mom is super talented too. She doesn't always show it. She just kind of she's like, whatever, I don't care. But the three of them especially would be so talented and then not talk about it at all. Be so talented and
Yeah.
then kind of downplay it. Almost like self-deprecating, that I got used to that culture that I just never wanted to. In movies, when you see someone that's like they walk up and they're like, yeah, he's just, especially, you know, and I won't throw anyone's particular movies
Yeah.
under the bus, but in 80s, you know, 80s action stars, they just smoke the cigarette, they throw it down, they beat up a bunch of guys and
Yep.
wipe blood off their face. They're like, now what? And I just always thought that's cool if that ever happened to you and you were really mad at someone and it was time for a real revenge and they deserved it. Sure, once, but a whole movie worth of you just kind of like kicking people and murdering, like even for instance, like Fists of Fury, like
Yeah.
the Chinese rebellion against the Japanese coming in, that's a notable reason to be mad and beat some people up. That
Yep.
totally justified. But in my mind, when I got into like, okay, who do I want to be in movies? What do I want to? I just think being a tough guy that beats everybody up is just a timeline that just doesn't go anywhere. It's a character arc that's just you're awesome, and then the movie and everyone's like, you're great. You're like, those people are paid to fall down. Like this is the most achievable thing ever. Hey, so I punch you, right? And then I block this. And especially, you know, people, and once again, I won't throw anyone under the bus, but people that are like doing it and then actually hitting people or actually throwing people harder than they should in a scene.
Yeah.
You're like, that man is paid to make you look good. Why would you hit him when
There's no
he's
reason to
literally
actually do that. Yeah.
You're not really fighting him. It's
Yeah.
not actually happening. I'm really sorry that your ego is telling you something that's not true. So in my mind, I avoided it for the reason of feeling, you know, like I want to be awesome and make sure everyone knows it. You're like, that's obvious. I want to be a person who's like humble and has the skills, not just humble because I can't do anything. And so, no, I was like, I want to be one of those people that's secretly just like crushing it and also never making you feel bad about it and never making you feel like you're not good enough by interacting with me. That's sucky. No one likes that because everyone goes from being a kid having no skills to having skills. And in that arc of when you get the skills, do you become a douchebag? And I thought that's a storyline that's so boring that no one ever needs to do again.
Exactly.
So I sort of just left acting in the beginning. I didn't come out and go, all right, I'm going to act, whatever. I just said, hey, I'm going to be in movies. Do you want me to act? Do you want me to stunt? You want me to whatever? I'm your guy. Because
you're in for it.
Yeah. On Monday morning, I want people to be inspired by the freaking Tommy Boy, the Chris Farleys, the freaking, right? The Jim Carreys, like all those guys. Like, don't get me started. Johnny Depp in the first Pirates of the Caribbean, when he came out with that character, I was like, see? Monday morning, you're like, that movie's hilarious. I can't believe how funny. Like, I just wanted that experience for people. So when I got in, that's what I really wanted. And even now, as I struggle forward to like do independent films and star in short films and slowly work my way up to kind of go from, you know, from the Jackie stuntman to Jackie actor guy, my clear-cut goal is to make sure that people get inspired. Not, and now you're an actor. Good job. Now you can kick stuntmen around. I'm like, no, I want to people see this horrible, slow struggle to becoming that and never lose touch with the fact that you're like, no, I started out because I was inspired to make movies. And I want people to be like, oh, if you start out like this, you can also do this, instead of going, you must immediately get into theater and act or else you will never be anyone. Like, I don't, I'm cutting a path through all that on purpose so that people come after me and go, so let me see if I got this right. You started out skateboarding with your brother. You were terrible at it. You created your own style of skateboarding because you were terrible at what people are doing, but you had these other skills you put in instead of just going, you know what? I'll just do parkour and just jump off stuff, I guess. That'll be easy. I said, no, I'm going to put in elements that I'm good at and the thing that I like, and I'm going to change it for me because that's what I want. And then I'm going to cut a path through so that you go, so you started out as like skateboard kid who people were barely filming, and then somehow you became Spider-Man over here in a magical turn of events. And that is a story though that's much more than inspiring than this guy started out as an actor. He did acting for 10 years and now he's in your superhero movie. You're like, who cares?
Yeah, because that's
and
thing,
not
like,
that that's bad for whoever does that path. That's sick, but it's not something that it is very foreseeable. One of those things isn't foreseeable.
But like you said before, like any kid hearing that story can think, oh, that could be me just because of that story. Like you're just hanging out with your brothers and you're recording stuff at home, and that helped you figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. You know, like that's all it starts from, man. Something just in your backyard. Like it starts from your childhood dream. That's it. Yeah.
And thank goodness as a child, you don't realize how hard it is, because as you chip away at those goals, you're like, well, this is almost insurmountable. There's 1,000 people in Los Angeles right now that are probably better than me at all of this stuff. But there's not 1,000 people in Los Angeles that are stupid enough to keep going when they're losing. And
Exactly.
that's what matters. And that's when you get out here, you realize a lot of people that become successful in Los Angeles, like the guy when I was a kid, I think his wife got hurt or something at some point in a car wreck. He took 50 grand, came out to LA, and then tried to basically make it by driving around a fancy car and getting seen at certain places. And here's the thing though, he wasn't wrong. There is a whole element to knowing the right people and being seen in the right light. In entertainment, people want you to look important because then they see you as important. They want you to look rich because, oh, he's already successful, then just give him the stuff, right? You don't want to look like you're not doing that. But at the same time, where the skill meets the luck of meeting the right people is a whole nother thing. So I have no judgment on the guy that when I was a kid did that and then kind of squandered the money and then went back home and just had nothing from it. Totally cool, because that was his path of like what he was trying to do. But for me, I went the other way where I said, I'm going to do raw skill. Like if I'm ever going to get anywhere, I'm going to go pure raw skill, try as hard as I can every single day. I'm going to look like an idiot screaming at myself until I do whatever it is. And I did. Like, just if you watch, there's a lot of video footage of me just very desperate. Like I'm not good. I want to be good so bad. If I could just somehow hype myself into it or not be as afraid as I am, or just like, get this one slam out of the way, I think I could really do it. And I think that for me, pushing through that is also cutting a path, because there's a lot of people who could make something really beautiful you've never seen before, but their natural skill and talent isn't towards that thing. And so they filter into the vein of, and I'm just a better dancer, to be honest with you. And it's cool because they'll probably make some beautiful impact in dancing. But the truth is the real thing that like twists and makes reality different is when elements of things that don't go together learn to go together, evolve into this other thing you haven't seen before. But that also takes someone who wants to work really hard to make it. And that's why if you look at my career or whatever, because I still have trouble seeing myself in as an adult and also having a career, and also whatever those things are, I just don't connect with that as much as just a journey towards like, I don't know, this is my goal. I did this stuff along the way towards where I'm going. Sure, you can look at it if you want to. I'm probably not going to, because I'm going there,
Yeah, for sure.
In my mind, I'm like another 20 years away from really being what I want to be and entertaining people in a way that's inspiring, like I've seen. Like I'm like, man, it's just hard work. But that's what's cool about, being raised by my dad, is he was such a hard worker that there's 1,000 people in this town that are naturally probably more talented than me, but there's not 1,000 people that will just do it and do it and do it and keep trying. And they're like, no, man, like my good friend Ilram Choi, who got me the job as Spider-Man, he has said to my face point blank, and I thank him for this. He's like, yeah, I mean, I've seen a bunch of stuff you're just not good at. You're just not good at it. And then you just
keep working.
I don't know if it's, and he doesn't say it, but I always say it like this, like maybe it's autism. I don't know, but you just refuse to let go of the fact that you aren't something and you want to be something. You don't have it and then you want to get it. And I just do. I'm like, all right, is it 1,000 tries? Is it 2,000 tries? How many tries is it? Because that's the truth, is like, there are so many people that can accomplish so much.
Yeah.
It's people staying motivated enough to actually do it. And that takes a special, either in your brain, you've made a choice about it, or you naturally are kind of, but for me, I think I just have rage to master, which is you never stop until you have that thing. And it'll take you longer than the people that are more naturally talented. But once you have it, you have your thing that you want, you're also in my opinion, 3 times as thankful as everyone else, because you have this thing that shouldn't have happened. And other people are like, yeah, I'm really good. I worked and I have it. And here it is. And I'm like, no, this shouldn't
There's a difference.
exist.
Yep.
Yeah, this shouldn't exist, though. Look at the logistics around it. It's almost magic,
It's very amazing to hear that, man, because your story is very inspiring, to be honest with you. And like you said, like a lot of the times people end up forgetting how to continue to work, or they just get lazy. And dismotivated, like it's troublesome for some.
It is, but sometimes people's lack of motivation has to do with their lack of like almost not being inspired enough.
Yeah.
And that, because we all as humans, I think our standard of being alive is lazy. Like as humans, if we could not work, we wouldn't. We
Oh,
wouldn't. We'd be
100%.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to the pool now because it feels better than sweating. So I never want people to feel like they're bad for being lazy or I'm not lazy. I'm lazy in a bunch of ways. I just also know when to make up for it and go, yeah,
Yeah.
you slacked off super hard. If you work here, I'll let you slack off again. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, good. I like that. But yeah, anyway, that's my overall. I know that took forever, but that's the
Oh, that's
reason
good.
why I did stunt work instead of just starting into acting, because it just felt like a more comfortable path that I could do in a different way that people aren't used to, instead of just kind of taking the elevator up to whatever. And even though that is much, much harder, I'm so used to doing things that are really hard for me because my natural talent areas weren't where I put them. And so I've gotten used to that. And answering that question fully is that even me now, um, I I will star in my own movies, in the next
Yeah.
few years here, no matter what, on whatever level. And I've done short films and stuff, the two Bellman series, and I've done things like that. We're going to make that into a full blown movie at some point here soon. I'm
Oh, cool.
excited for those things, but also sort of losing perspective on where I came from. I don't really do. So hopefully people will finally see a lot of things that I've just done small. I want to try this like kind of interesting new stunt or new whatever. I'll finally get to do it on a bigger scale that sort of like, I would say, expands on what I meant to do. And people can find like, oh, they gave him time and money to, I saw these cool, I did this thing in this Fiat commercial where I put two cars. I basically had a car tow another car. And then I was kind of like basically slacklining between cars driving down the
Yeah.
street. But just concepts like that I've never gotten to put into anything that I think it'll be really cool to sort of finally, have the budget for. Because that's the biggest thing out here. Like I said, there's
Yep.
1,000 people in LA right now that could be your favorite actor. And whether it's luck, hard work, timing, they're not there. And so I think for anyone who's listening who's like, hey, man, what's your advice? I would say the difference between people who make it here and people who don't make it in LA is staying when things are hard. Because a lot
Yeah.
of people get, hey, it just doesn't make sense. I've been here for 3 years, nothing hit. That's okay. I tried it. That's cool if you're like building a business or whatever, and you go, hey, just these are the numbers I should have hit. This business, the numbers you should have hit and when they hit is nuts. I mean, dude, No Way Home is like 8 years after the other movies. Like,
Yeah, which is crazy.
yeah, like that. And by the way, they put us in the exact same suits.
Oh,
The
really, eh?
exact same. I went to the lady who built my suit. She's so awesome. She's this tiny Vietnamese lady, and
Yeah.
she's the coolest. But anyway, she looked at me, and I love, by the way, another thing about Asian culture is people are pretty honest with you, especially just about physical. And they're like, she's like, I have to say, I can't believe you can still fit in that suit. And it was like, but it was basically to the effect of like, I thought you were gonna get fat. There, I said it. I was
Yeah,
like,
a little too
yeah,
honest with that, but
yeah. But really, that stuff, like because my boss, who George Cottle, who invited me to work on Tenet, and just doing those scenes, the reverse kind of like scenes where they're doing the battle at the end of Tenet, if you've seen it.
yeah, yeah. So you worked on that too?
Oh yeah, I worked
Oh
on
my
that. I worked
goodness,
on
sick.
Oh, I worked on. But here's another thing too, and this is really important for people who are listening. Do me a favor and don't do what I do, because this is what I do. Because I'm a perfectionist, I'm not always impressed with what I've done, meaning, well, I would have done it like this, or I would have done it like that, or this is how it should have been, that I'll just not mention things I've done because I'm like, oh, that was cool, I guess. Right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
it, when you get out here, is a job and you're really thankful to be on it, but it doesn't play out. Like you can't go, hey, I was in Cobra Kai and here's all my scenes and look at me fighting people and being awesome and here's my face and here's the character. But you just go, yeah, I stunt doubled so and so, and like there's a ton of stuff like that. But
Yeah.
if it doesn't reach my quota of what I think is impressive, I just won't mention it. So if you're
Okay.
doing stunts, oh yeah, many things. Like I haven't made a resume in years just
Yeah.
because I'm like, I don't remember. I guess I did Party of Five. Oh yeah, I did Animal Kingdom. Oh yeah, I did CSI New York. Oh yeah, I did that new show, The Rookie. But for me, I'm going, yeah, but I'm trying to make my Jackie Chan movie. I'm trying to make that it's kind
Yeah.
of not. But if you come out here to do stunts or acting or being, make sure people know about it. Really try to
Yeah.
self promote. If I could say anything else about it, because a lot of times with skateboarding, you make a video part that's great, people know, people hit you up. Yeah, you can send out sponsor me tapes, but if people like what you're doing, they'll probably hit you up because it's awesome, right? That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But out here, self promotion is a huge deal. And yeah, it's a whole industry of people concentrating on themselves too much. But really, if you're out here and you've done something you're proud of, tell people about it. Really do, because you never know who's listening, watching, and hyped. And on
Yeah.
a lot of those jobs, you meet someone for the next job who just likes you. They're like, yeah, I could hire 50 other stunt guys, but you're just the one who didn't make it a big deal and I like. So try to do that. But yes, anyway, so I was on Tenet. He had brought me on from Scorch Trial. By the way, Scorch Trials and Tenet. I may have done another one with George Cottle, but
Okay.
once again, Ilram Choi, who should be my agent, he
Yeah.
introduced me to George. He recommended me to George. I can't thank Ilram Choi enough. He's the one person who really believed in me. And if you can do that out here, if you come out here, your friends, whatever, you take care of them, they take care of you. But if you can be inspired by anyone or have them inspired, Ilram Choi is the one person who's the most clever, smartest, talented, so far above just being a stunt man or stunt coordinator or
Yeah.
fight coordinator. He's incredibly talented in so many ways. And he was the one person who was like, hey, George, you should hire William. Hey, George. Anyway, so I get hired by George a couple of times. In fact, they hired me the first time on Scorch Trial. They were having people run and chase this camera car. And they were like, they just hired me. They didn't think anything about it. And then when I was chasing this camera car, they were like, wow, you can keep up with the camera car. And as a kid, I wasn't really, I'd played soccer and stuff, but I was never like a person who's like, yeah, I do track and whatever. I just didn't care. I was just in the woods. And
Yeah.
if you ran fast, it was also from a dog that was trying to bite you. And that's it. Like, that's my motivation. Like I don't,
Yeah.
so I didn't really, but they brought me into Tenet because Dan Brown, who I was working with, remembered he was a zombie with me. He was working for George Cottle. And he was like, dude, I can't believe you can keep up with that camera car. And I was like, if I'm on film and I'm entertaining people, I'll do a bunch of stuff I'm probably not capable of because I'm so excited to entertain people. I'm just excited for people to watch this movie and be psyched. So after I got off Tenet or whatever, it had been a little while since I talked to George, and he called me up one day and he's like, hey, there's a secret project coming up. But are you available for it? And it has to do with superheroes or whatever. And I was like, George, why are you making this sound like a mystery? And he's like, it kind of, NDAs or whatever. I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't think anything about it. I'm filming my brand new video part. I'm just concentrating. And that's another thing. When you get out here, people aren't calling you. You should be producing your own content, your own movies, your own whatever that you want. Because a lot of times this industry, people will call you for what they want from you. They don't care what they haven't seen. They're not
Yeah.
sure whatever else you're capable of. They just want this A, B, and C skateboarding that you've shown them before. You have to make your if you want to stay happy with yourself as an artist, you keep making stuff in between the phone calls that don't come.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Really. So I'm waiting for this or whatever else. Anyway, one day George calls me up and he's like, hey, so Marvel called me and asked for you to stunt double Spider-Man. And I was like, if you know anything about stunt doubling, and by the way, this is no, you never want to throw people under the bus that it's unnecessary, right?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
go, well, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't care about offending or not offending. I just judging things unnecessarily. I just don't really do now. I just have had too much experience. But Marvel calls him and is like, hey, George, we got to get William. And it was probably Andrew, who's has always been super kind to me. He's always been thoughtful about trying to help me or whatever. And he goes, hey, so yeah, Marvel called me and they want you to do this new Spider-Man movie and double Andrew in it. And I was like, let me stop you there, Chief. Marvel called you?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm like kind of making fun of him. He's like, no, they did. And he's done everything. He works with Christopher Nolan. So he's done all the Batman movies. He's probably doubled Batman. He's like huge. And I'm like, George, Marvel did not call you about me. And he's like, they did. And I was like, okay. And he was like, William, I don't know why that's so hard to understand. And for him, on his scale of what he's used to, sure, you talk to people all the time, studios all the time, that's normal. But dude, if you know anything about superhero movies and people stunt doubling, and I don't mean that there's a non-value, but people, when you make a movie, they're most of all, yeah, people want to make a good movie, sure, who doesn't? Because they want it to sell. But
Yeah.
they just kind of go, all right, here's our actor, here's whoever else we need to make sure the character looks okay and doesn't look crappy, and then here's our bottom line, which is we'll just CG everything later if it's crappy. So the stunt doubling in it, unless you're in someone's contract and you're sort of a feeder fish, meaning the actor goes, this is my guy, he comes with me everywhere, you got to pay him this, right?
Yeah.
And that your buddy or whatever it is, or whatever situation that's realistic and good, meaning you have a great actor who truly respects what you do and they are a team with you, that's cool. But mostly studios or Marvel, whoever, they don't keep track of that stuff because sure, they can respect you and they might go, yeah, I met this guy, I think he's great, I met that guy. But mostly stunt doubles are there so that the person looks good.
Yep.
If anybody gets hurt, you can swap them out. And then if you have a couple units running, Spider-Man can be a bunch of places, right? That's just the way it goes. The reason why I'm saying that like that, the reason why I was making fun of George saying Marvel called is because it wouldn't surprise me, because I'm humble enough to understand that they could have swapped.
This was for you, and being on the set of the Spider-Man films, what did it mean to you?
I think it meant to me so much more than I could kind of quantify at the time. This is what's funny is, so, and this is, by the way, no one's fault but mine, but I spent 6 years in LA making more skateboard videos because as I got here, whatever, I got into a live show at Magic Mountain called Batman Begins. And when I got into that show, I thought as soon as I'm like, oh my gosh, I got this audition. I flew out here. I got into the show. And now I work here. So you guys are just going to pay me.
Yeah.
No. No. They pay you for a couple of weeks to train you. And then if you're not one of the higher people on the list, then they just don't. They're like, yeah, whatever, dude. Who cares? Like, we'll see you later. So I spent a bunch of time in Los Angeles filming skateboard videos, trying to get stunt jobs, trying to train, trying to get in and like do the thing, but not doing it. And then finally over the 6 years, getting small stunt jobs, building up.
Building the credit, yeah.
Yeah, but for people on the outside, because I didn't market myself before that really, and I was just kind of shy about marketing, people thought it was an overnight thing for me to get that Spider-Man movie. Mm-hmm. They thought that I just showed up and just jumped on the movie, like, oh, you did some viral skateboard videos and they just like you, so you're on. People had no idea that I had been here for 6 years, just pounding the pavement, being a background actor for 2 years, doing all the like hustling, walking up to sets like, hey, I'm William, nice to meet you. And the stunt coordinators are like, it's our lunch break. What are you doing here? It's like this whole 6 year block of just not even.
They just think it's just the end result. That's really it.
Yeah. So I just felt that and a lot of people do this, dude, that people spend so much time here in Los Angeles just trying to make something happen, just make anything happen. And it just doesn't hit. Like, I know so many people at the gym right now. You go to Jam, Joining All Movement, and it's this amazing, it's owned by stunt guys and awesome people like Travis Wong and, Aaron Toney. And it's just this kind of like mecca hub for people to train. Whatever. But you just have people will train there every day. They're incredible. You see them, they can break dance, they can fight, they can flip, they can do parkour, they can do incredible trampoline tricks, and then they just aren't on a cool job. Like, you can spend so much time here. So for me, my overall thing to say to that is when Ilram got me the job on Spider-Man, it made me take a step back and go, wow, like in my mind, I'm like very unconfident. I'm very like worried I'm not good enough. I'm always trying to be better. Skateboarding is so hard and scary. Like, who am I that when I got that movie, I didn't go, I'm great. I went, I can't believe I'm good enough to be on this movie. Is anyone seeing this? Is anyone like, wow, because it really made me go, all right, you've worked your butt off for this for years. You've told no one. you've not marketed yourself at all. So for this to be happening, this occurrence is actually incredible in a lot of ways. And though no one's seeing the hard work and the undercurrent of 6 years of you just cranking,
Grinding, yeah.
that it meant the world to me, because I didn't even know if I was capable of it. I didn't know if I could represent the character in a way that wasn't a gigantic letdown. That I loved Spider-Man as a kid, who doesn't, but
Yep.
I really, all the comic, my brother used to draw, like, I remember he won this contest at I think at the state fair in Texas, in
Yeah.
Tyler. And it must have been a poster sized drawing of Spider-Man. I think he's like, his leg is above his head, he's swinging down. And I think he maybe cut the Punisher out of it, but it was gigantic drawing of Spider-Man. I would just walk by in the bedroom all the time and just be like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So for me, it was the biggest deal ever, because I was both like elated and also worried to like represent a character that means that much
For
to
sure.
that many people. I was like, okay, like, I'm gonna go home and study. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home, and I don't know what you do. Like, I don't know what people do to get into this, but I'm about to do it, you know?
Yeah, it was probably a lot of pressure because that film series, obviously being as big as it is, Spider-Man being probably one of the biggest superheroes of all time, like it's a lot that people have to go into it, and people realizing and also watching will know the difference of someone who actually loves the character and who doesn't. So all those things
Yeah.
probably came into it.
Yeah. And for me, and I don't know, I mean, I've obviously done some interviews about this, but the crazier part of me getting to be Spider-Man is that I wasn't supposed to even do it because I had missed the audition, you know?
Oh,
Ilram.
really?
Oh, you never heard? Oh, this story is hilarious. I'll try to, anyone, it's funny because anyone who's heard this is always like, I'm sure someone right now is like, this story again, huh? But it's pretty interesting. So this is what I did, is waiting around LA for something to happen, you know, like always going back to Colorado to film skateboarding, because I was sponsored by a shop there. My
Yeah.
brother was there. He's sponsored by the shop. We have that partnership with them. And I just always, you know, anytime LA, I'm like, oh, whatever. What am I even doing this here? Who do I know that films? Who do I know that it can like help me? And I was like, well, I know people in Denver. So I would constantly be going back. Well, this was one of the times I'd gone back to Denver. I'd gotten some little commercials, and I'd worked on TV shows like Zeke and Luther, and, you know, done
Yeah.
some skateboard doubling for a couple of years there, but nothing really major yet. And one day they called me. I think the assistant of Vic Armstrong was like, hey man, so we're gonna have an audition for Spider-Man, and we want you to come to this audition. And I was like, you do? And they're like, yeah, Ilram gave us your name. And I was like, I'm just gonna start writing him a thank you letter right now. Like,
Yeah.
just really, because here's what's cool. So this is one of the parts of the story, and I'll try to sort of make this a sub little part in the bigger story. It's just that, for starters, and I actually have a call with Ilram today. He and I keep missing each other because we just love to keep in touch when we can. But
Yeah.
I had been hiking with him a few times. I had seen him at the gym a few times and trained a little bit. But overall, if I was Ilram and he was me, I would have been like, oh, I don't know if I really know this person or their skill level or what. But
Yeah.
and that's what I'm truly thankful for, because if you know Ilram, and pretty much everybody here who's in the stunt industry, if you don't know Ilram, you know about Ilram. If you don't know about Ilram, you know somebody. He's incredible. And so for him to have any sort of an opinion or be in your corner, you're like, oh, okay, right? Because I didn't even know him that well. I don't know if he thought I was crazy. I don't know what he thought. I don't know if he saw videos and maybe that helped. But I remember getting this call. He put my name in, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, just let me know when the audition is. Because I was like already worried, because when you first get here, you're so thirsty that if the phone rings, you're like, hey, man, I'm in Bali. I'll be there in 10 hours. They're like, planes don't fly that fast. You're like, I said I'll be there. You know, like, you're worried
Like,
about you want to be there. You're like, I'm ready to, what do I got to do? I'll jump. And so I was like, okay, well, do you want me to leave right now? They're like, no, just relax. The audition's in 2 weeks, man. I was like, oh, okay. And so they're like, you know, we'll just email you. I was like, oh, I'm going to stop you there. I don't. And at this point, dude, my like technology to ratio of how much I use to how much there is. It's like, this is how much there is, and this is what I'm using. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't do email on phone. I barely do email on a computer. And when my first video part, Colorado, went viral, it took my roommate, and I say roommate, I was living on their couch because Vernon Lewis and Landon, they were like, hey, man, you're in the stunt show with us. You live in your car. Just stay on our couch. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. So Vernon one day is like, hey, man, can I talk to you for a second? I was like, oh, no, I don't. Yeah, I guess. What? Brings me into his room, sits me at his computer. I don't have a computer. I don't own a computer. It doesn't matter. I don't own a computer for a bunch of reasons, but mostly because I don't have the money. Anyway, he dials up my video on YouTube and he's like, see that? It's a couple million people, William. They saw your video. And I was like, is that good? He was like, yeah. Like, really? Really? He's like, yeah, that's a lot. But I'm like, but aren't there a lot of people online? He's like, yeah, no, just trust me, it's a lot. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever, right? So I'm not at all involved with technology is the point of that story. So when they tell me, William, we're going to email you, I was like, please don't email me. I beg you, do not. Just give me a phone call and then I will come there. Like, I'm like, I know. And by the way, I'm in an abandoned pool in some warehouse trying to film skateboarding. And I'm like, please. Like, people are going
this is also stressful already. Like,
yeah. But what ends up happening is that they do not call me for the audition. They do email me. I never check the email. And the day of the audition, they call me and they're like, hey, William, how's it going? Are you coming in today? And I was like, coming in where today? And they're like, oh, to the audition. I was like,
how?
I guess I won't be there. And you know what they say? It's like Vic. I think it may have actually been Vic Armstrong himself. I can't remember. He was like, oh, that's fine. You're fine. You know what? We'll just catch you on the next one. No big deal. And I was like,
oh, wow.
It must be nice to be you and like have those standards of like success. I was like, the next one? I was like, I don't
That's
think
crazy,
so. Anyway,
bro.
So super heartbroken about it because it was my fault. I should have, when they said, it's in a couple weeks, I should have been like, hey, everybody, I'm going to Los Angeles. I'm just going to kind of be there. I'm just going to kind of hang and be ready. But I was like, I wouldn't mind finish filming or whatever I'm doing, which is in retrospect, in the biggest picture. Yeah, I did the right thing for myself going, hey, life's short. What do you really want to be doing? Right.
And things worked out, obviously, right? Things worked out perfectly fine. Like it still happened the way it was supposed to. And was meant to be, man. That's
But it's crazy because the reason why it's meant to be is different than that. So none of that goes on. They, just so you know, too, they've already picked Ilram. And Ilram says, I would call William for this audition. It doesn't even mean I would have gotten. Here's another thing, too. I may have not gotten it at the audition, right?
Yeah.
But the real end all be all, because they picked somebody great. They picked David Elson. He's super acrobatic. He does parkour. He has fantastic, tricks, like all kinds of. And I think he probably grew up in a gym or something. I forget to ask him that actually, but he's really acrobatic. He's really good. Just good gymnastics background.
Yeah.
But he had gotten it, and what's interesting is he got the audition or whatever, and he had booked it, and so they brought him in and they started working out. All right, we have to do all these practical stunts. It's Amazing Spider-Man. It's not Spider-Man. It's gonna be not CG. We're gonna do all this crazy stuff. And so him and Ilram are working out all the logistics of what people are really gonna do as Spider-Man. And it's probably been a couple of months since the audition, and they're pretty deep in the game, 2 or 3. And then they finally hire the actor. So they totally hired David Elson. They hired Ilram way ahead of time, right? And their height difference must be, I mean, David Elson is basically, I'll tell you this, and this is a really cool fact about David Elson. He actually has doubled all 3 Spider-Men, which is super cool.
Wow. That's crazy. That's actually sick.
And it's actually kind of like time travelish because he doubled Andrew in the first movie. They picked him before Andrew, and their height difference was a fair amount. And so I just ended up being closer to the spec. So they just made more sense with that. But then after that series of movies was over, he didn't do the second one with us. But when they came back for Tom Holland, I think they may have started with some other people, but he got on the Tom Holland thing. He ends up doubling him on those movies. And then on the very last one, they had Greg and Luke, who were great doubles for Tom. they still had David, right? And they said, well, wait a minute, Tom and Tom and Toby are kind of variable heights, and so we're like, just have David double, yeah, have him
Yeah,
double Toby and call it a day. So he's actually, it's so cool. He's doubled everybody, which is
that's
like,
incredible though,
what
man.
a freaking, yeah, what a freaking record to have. That must feel awesome. And he got to wear all the different types of
All the
suits, which
suits.
is, I mean, except for the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but still mostly all of them,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So they picked him. When they finally get Andrew in there, the decent height difference, but whatever they're thinking, because what else they're thinking is, hey, if Spider-Man's a little bit shorter, because they also had Jay Caputo, who's an amazing gymnast, and
Yeah.
Andy Armstrong, the stunt coordinator, and I think he was actually, so his older brother Vic was the second unit director. Andy was the stunt coordinator on this, and then his son James was kind of co-coordinating with him, assisting too, and co-coordinating. But
Yeah.
he had it so that he thought, and this is really smart, and Andy's really good about visual, just like cute. He studied all the Buster Keaton, all the old stunts that are very real, all the perspectives, all the Charlie Chaplin where people are doing things that are visually, they're real, but it's
Yeah.
tricking your eye in some way. And what he wanted to do is use Jay, he's quite a bit shorter than Andrew, and a little shorter than David too, actually. He wanted to have it so that it basically looks like this, that Spider-Man looks like this, and then the lizard actually looks like this. So in their action, it actually makes sense, where you're like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, he's that much bigger. We're informing the audience in a real shot how much bigger Spider-Man
He knew
or
how
the
to use the
lizard.
camera work with it and make it work.
So what's interesting is that all worked within that movie. And basically, as they started rehearsing, they got Andrew in there. They brought his trailer into this warehouse, not too far from Sony. And he's working with the guys. He's working with Ilram. He's working with David. He's getting his movements down. He's becoming Spider-Man. The whole stunt team is there. Jen Caputo and freaking, oh my gosh, so many people. Tyler Barnett, Mark Dirksey. And they're just all, just rigging for him, whatever. But Andrew gets in there, and as he's training, he's watching videos at lunchtime, and he's trying to get himself into the character, and he's
Yeah.
thinking about the character. He's like, Peter Parker, like, who is he? What is he? What do I want him to be? Who do I want him to be? And then one day, I think he was at lunch or whatever, and he's like looking on the internet, and what he was doing is he's like, you know what? I skateboarded as a kid. I think it's kind of a cool thing to give to Peter Parker for him to be a skater. He's like, what if? And I remember him telling me the story. He's like, I'm just going to search for people on the internet that skateboard like Spider-Man.
That's so crazy.
And I was like, and he was like, and your name came up, right? So he has a computer. He's like, hey, you guys, what do you think about this guy? If Spider-Man skated, what do you think about this guy? And, Ilram's there, like eating a sandwich probably. And he's like, that guy? He blew it. I tried to get him to the audition. Blew it, And so they're like, get him in here. And they called me that day, came down, met Andrew, met the team. And it was crazy to meet people like Andy Armstrong, who's like a legend in the business. Just like legendary English dude. No nonsense whatsoever. Like he's very funny. He has a very dry sense of humor, but he's not kidding around. And to meet someone like that was like nerve-wracking and just deeply satisfying to be like, wow, this is awesome. These people are exactly as you think they would be.
Yeah, for
they're
sure.
like, there's a reason why they're that successful and that awesome. And so met everybody and just kind of got in there with Andrew. And as we were going along, I just remember, because my older brother in skateboarding, if I'm not doing something right, or, we're filming something skateboarding, he's like, is that how you're going to do it? And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, it doesn't, you drag your toe, or, ooh, the arm is weird.
Something's off.
do it.
Yeah.
So I did that with Andrew. He and I, our relationship, I wasn't like, oh, this guy is going to star in this movie, I better fake respect him. I was like, we somehow, all of us standing here in this room, are gonna have to make Spider-Man look like he's real.
Yeah.
We better step it up. So for myself, yeah, always self-heckling. Like, I don't think that's good enough, William. But me and Andrew would go back and forth. I was like, so what's up? Are they training you? Is there like a consultant from Marvel that's gonna come in and like tell you how like get out the comic books and shit? Like, no, we don't have that. And I was like, we don't have a consultant to make sure that Spider-Man is going to look awesome and all the classic poses are done. They're like, no, we don't. What? No. And I'm like, I'm getting a bunch of comic books. And so I just got in there and was like, all right, Andrew, what about this? What about that? What is it? And I think part of him was like, William, you're heckling me. I don't like it. And the other part was like, ooh, is that going to make it better? Ooh, it might. So that's how
Yeah.
our relationship developed. And he skateboards, he knows when you don't do it right, you just do it again. And I think with that mentality, that's sort of just how we started out. That it was a very much like, hey man, we got to make this great, or else what are we doing here? And that's how it rounded out into that relationship and kind of just getting on that movie, and then it just somehow being kind of meant to be.
That's incredible, man. It's so amazing to hear that story and hear the rundown of how that whole process went down. Um, Another thing I was gonna actually ask you, like adding on to that, was what was that process like to be on Spider-Man No Way Home, and obviously working with the other stunt double, working with Andrew, Tom, Toby, like what was that whole process like for you guys? And obviously it was like one of the best kept secrets. Like was there obviously, like you said, NDAs and stuff, like all that, like what happened for you guys, and how was that keeping that big secret for everybody?
You know what's interesting about it is they were pretty hush hush about it in general, even when I got the call 6 months ahead of time, because they actually, George, which bless him, he's so awesome. He wanted me to come down 6 months earlier and just kind of prep it. And a lot of times with that, it's for the paycheck of it, to making sure that you're taken care of, whatever. Because
Yeah.
actually, if you watch the amount of action that Andrew does in that movie, pretty minimal, right? There's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
not a lot. Like, there's a lot of CG and whatever. But he was going to bring me down, and I was in the middle of filming this really big video part for Thrasher, that I just sort of was like, oh man, I would love to come down because that paycheck is gorgeous. I just can't kind of step away from this stuff. So I really set it up so that I could just like, hey man, how long is Andrew going to be there? For a month? Okay, bring me down for that month. And then he and I will get in there and do whatever we need to do with that. So it was a smaller amount of time than it really probably could have been. But for me, that's what was important about it, to kind of be in the same space at the same time to kind of get back into it.
Yeah.
I think that my overarching thoughts about the whole thing are simply this: is that I think Andrew knew it was an unavoidable opportunity to like be able to do stuff with Toby, of course, but also for the fans, because how deeply invested they are. Like, he just knew how much it meant to people, which I think is really cool for him to have an awareness around what it meant for
Yeah.
people. And then beyond that, I think in his own personal journey of acting, of where he wants to be, I think he's much more in that Oscar track. He wants to win an Oscar. That's too broad. I think he just wants to be the level of actor that is totally eligible for that.
Definitely.
Totally has earned it, would earn it, wants to like just be on that track. And so I think playing Spider-Man for him was sort of yeah, I'll do it, but also, yeah, I'm going to bring as much Oscar-worthy performance to it as possible. And you kind of go, well, this is sort of a summer fun movie. And he's like, I'm me,
Yeah.
and I'm going to act as well as possible no matter what. And in a lot of the scenes, I could tell that the director was kind of going, hey man, I'm actually going for something a little maybe lighter than that. But at the same time, them kind of meeting in the middle of where that is, because still the amount of intensity that, in my opinion, just my opinion, but the amount of intensity that Andrew brought to it,
Yeah.
in those tiny moments that he got to have, the bread scene and whatever, you still kind of go, wow, that's 8 years worth of built up everything in your performance. So was he wrong? I don't know. But when you watch that movie, if he would have been too light and kind of fun, you would have kind of been like, oh, that's cool, I guess. So I don't think his choice was wrong on that. I don't know. Meeting in the middle of how intense he wants to be and where the director is in their mind
Yeah.
well, I'm not trying to distract people from the bigger overall plot. That's a game for anyone to decide later in editing, how much of that you can use and how much takes away from the other story. But I think for me, as Andrew and I were kind of like, getting back into it, I felt like, yeah, he'll play Spider-Man again for these other reasons. His love playing Spider-Man to play Spider-Man, I don't, for him, and, obviously I'd love to ask him, but I don't think it was about that. I think it was about the fans. I think it was about the experience of getting to film with Toby and Tom, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think he just realized this is an awesome party to be a part of, because in history, and you never want to in my opinion, put over importance on things that like in history, but for what it is in this world, that's a gigantic meeting of, you know, worlds colliding that like needed to happen, and the fans were deeply moved by it. So I think it was cool to be a part of that with him, because our relationship still, I think on my side, is developed a lot more as far as I understand how I feel about that relationship
Yeah.
with Andrew. I think on his side, it's sort of stuck in time where it was, which is fine. He's doing other things. But for me, you know, just watching how that stuff goes down, I don't think for me, my interaction with, you know, helping him do what he needs to do is the same as it used to be, because my overall filmmaking knowledge, as far as what I know about what I see about filmmaking and making a movie on that scale, I don't know how helpful I was to him
Yeah.
with that, only because I think he was deeply invested in kind of going, hey, I want to do this for these other reasons, and you're here too. And I said, all right, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's my meaning that I got out of it isn't really connected to that though, you know. So
Oh, that's incredible, man. That's amazing to hear, actually. I think, like you said, his level of acting in that film still stands up, and people remember certain lines, or even his was the second, or sorry, the third act of the film. Like that little screen time that he had, it was so impactful, and it seemed like he didn't even miss a beat from 2014. And I thought that you guys did an incredible job with taking his character, because I read up that the director asked them, like, where do you guys want to take your character? Like, you guys can help with that. And I thought that was so brilliant, because a lot of the times, you know, actors don't really have much of a say in where they want to take their character in sequel films and stuff. So I thought it was brilliant that John Watts, the director, did that for Toby and Andrew.
I think it's really brilliant. I think that director in general is really nice, really
Yeah.
awesome, really aware. Uh, he, I don't know, when you see how that movie is put together, it takes someone very brilliant to go, all right, here's all these standards of in game. Here's all the worlds colliding, the world's ending, and it's crumbling, and it's going into pieces. The whole universe is dying, whatever those stakes are that people keep pushing. And he was like, I have an idea. What if we put a really small, very personal story inside this giant story? What if? What if we get really detailed, and there's like a bunch of kindness and other stuff in there, and people like not having to fight for their lives every moment of the movie? And you're like, you're good, right? Because he could have, dude, if you think about it directorially, he could have just bowed to it and been like, hey, you're right, we got to outdo Endgame now. What's going to
Yep.
explode? You know, like all the universes are explode. But I think he made an amazing coming of age story. And also, I think he made a brother story inside of that. Like, because relating to yourself in different universes, I think that's not talked about enough, because we as humans, there's so many different parts of your brain that don't connect, that you wish were friends, because you just fight with yourself all day. And I think it
Yep.
was a cool, really cool, that multiverse showing him being supportive of himself was incredible. And I think, moreover, not only directorially, he did an incredible job. Obviously, people freaking love that movie, but what people love is that it was a loving between them. They were very brotherly. And what's interesting is, from the inside track, Andrew really connected to, when we talked about it, he was like, yeah, he watched the other, you know, the animated multiverse movie. And you know, the Spider-Man, obviously, with the sweatpants, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, he's a little bit played out, he's a little bit tired. He connected to that so much that when we were doing the scene where he like jumps, he's like, William, just make sure, remember, when you jump up and you grab the ceiling or whatever, like his back hurts. He's like
Yeah.
haggard. He really wanted that for himself, because I think it was the most real version of how he maybe feels about it.
Yeah.
And I remember there being a specific moment where they were like, that's sick. Toby's right. Toby's that. Come on. Toby's that much older than you, though. And I
Yeah.
think it was
Which made
those
sense.
moments where he was like, fine, give him the back thing, you know, which you can't blame, because it is a good, if you think about it, Spider-Man is so spry. Everything about that is inherent to the audience, that as soon as you make him a little bit haggard, it sticks out. You're like, yeah, that's sick. Like, that makes sense. That dude's freaking, like, he's he's been through so much that he's like
How
trying to
many
grab his,
years now? Yeah.
you know. But I thought it was funny because if you watch those scenes, because I remember them filming that on the day, and he like helps Pop hit, Toby's back or whatever. That I know he was thinking like, because in his mind, most dramatic, most interesting, most real is best. And then he was like, "And I got this for you, Toby. Here you go.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
figured this out." And I just remember that. So it was funny to see that because I understand the inside track of those things a little bit more now, where to the public, people are like, whatever, it's all sick. I don't even care. But if those choices aren't made in a really great way, you might notice.
You'll notice it. And that's the thing. Like, I think what stood out about the film was people obviously we do love action films, we do love superhero films for the action scenes, but when it comes down to the characters and having such personality with the three of them talking and stuff, those are the best moments for me in the film, was just having them interact instead of all the fight scenes going on and stuff.
Well, not only that, but I thought that was really cool because as you do, of course, but I thought it was really cool that anybody else would have been like, all right, well, let's figure out who, like the cocky, too American, red blooded, let's see who's the best Spider-Man. Like that thought, whatever it is, they were like, yes, that exists. People have that thought. Let's do a quick little duel that's
Yep.
makes them look awesome, and then they're over it. Like, let's do a check-in. Like, are you really Spider-Man? Bang. Oh, you are. And then they become
Discover
like,
it, and that's it.
well, and it's just a much more, in my opinion, meaningful choice.
Yeah.
Just more meaningful,
It seemed like it would have been out of character for them to kind of go against each other, with how Peter Parker is too. Like, so
totally. Yeah. My point is I support that choice because I could see people have, not that this matters, but people have come to me about short films and they go, let's make this short film about Spider-Man. Let's do this. And it always comes down to me fighting another Spider-Man,
yeah.
And here's the thing. Do I think that's interesting? In the right situation, you betcha. In the wrong situation, I mean, it's not even bad because for YouTube and small stuff like that, you want something quick and entertaining. But for a big plot of a movie, I just don't know if it holds water for enough time to complete a movie.
No, 100%, man. I think like with this film too, like it holds such a close heart, like to me personally, just because of obviously being a huge Spider-Man fan too, and what
Sure.
it represented to see all three of them on the screen. So you, obviously being a fan too, like what was that moment like for you to obviously be like, holy crap, like Andrew, Toby, and Tom are all here interacting right in front of me. Like, what was that like for you? Was everyone?
I think for me, I have a sort of in my life, really, really bad stuff has happened and really, really good stuff has happened. And I have a little bit of like a distance from it where I can kind of see it a little bit clearer from further away. And so part of me is obviously like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And the other part of me is like, oh, it's just life. It happens. I think it was both at the same time. I was thinking in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, the fans are going to be psyched. Obviously me, I'm going, I just talked to Toby. He's hilarious. Like, cause he's one of those people that I think has had a full circle where, he went through his phase of like, the paparazzi, I hate everybody. People won't stop. People are bothering me. And then he's come to this really beautiful place where he's kind of let all that stuff go. And in this movie, he was really thankful that he was there. You could just tell he was thankful.
Yeah, you could tell.
The movie isn't riding on him. He's the older brother. He can be sincere. He can be genuine. It's in the timeline. He just develops into this really awesome person, and you get to have him be the older brother to the younger brothers. And I think he really felt that, and that's how it felt to me. So when I watched those moments, I felt very like, I was like, this is rad that these guys are open enough to show that level of sincerity to each other.
Yeah.
Because that on film, yeah, hell yeah, we beat the guy, high five. All those like Top Gun moments, not that that's not an incredible movie, but that doesn't fit with this world. And I'm just so glad that they were aware enough of emotionally the IQ that it takes, emotional IQ to like get to a place where people are hugging and you're like, hug some more, you guys. I don't know, like
yeah,
for
sure.
I thought the emotional, they had nailed because when you watch those scenes, it was obviously much smaller and much quieter and much more intimate, because they're on the stage, they're kind of away, there's water in between, and they're playing at, the Statue of Liberty, basically, the
Yeah,
shield.
the shield thing.
They're
Yeah.
on that. So the actual filming area to get up closer is obviously, you couldn't be right there when they were shooting it. But the intimacy of that was definitely there, and it was rad. It's almost like they knew the moment was so big for the audience that they didn't bother playing it up at all. Like
Yeah.
they were just kind of like, yeah, man, cool, we'll see it. That, and the subtleness of that, I remember thinking, like, that's rad, that's on track, because I guarantee the audience right now is just like, they're like, who's got a napkin? Who's got a handkerchief?
Yeah, they had a lot of emotional scenes, man, towards it was incredible.
Yeah, and I love that they understated it, that they didn't try to overdo it, or like, they could have done a bunch of like, all right, tag team, and you do this. Like, there was no tough guyness around it, which I just thought was the right call for that.
It was good too. I think that they kind of gave us a recap of where they were at in their lives with Andrew Spider-Man and Toby's too. The scene at the lab when they're just having that little conversation, it was just enough to give you an idea where their heads at, and you see obviously what Toby's been up to and Andrew, and
Sure. Sure. No, I loved it. I just love that they picked the right moments that were just enough. Yeah, you just literally saw a little window into their world where you didn't, if they would have talked any more than that, you're like, oh man, I didn't need to know that. I thought it was great
Yeah.
for what it was. Yeah. Yeah, they picked really, really well. And it's funny, you don't even notice, but there's scenes in there where he's like doing stuff with all the beakers or what. Dude, I did some second unit freaking gloves on, lab coat, like looking at a micro, all this handwork. And I was like, there's really not a guy that does handwork. And they're like, William, you're here. I was like, you're right. I'm not doing anything else. I will mess with these microscopes, I guess. So funny what you get up to on a real movie.
Oh man. It's kind of crazy to think though, like the film came out in 2021 and it's still so impactful to a lot of people, and anyone that's asked, like, I think I remember when I went to watch it for the very first time, that theater reaction, it's incredible, man. Like, you guys probably seen clips and stuff too of it on like TikTok and whatever, What was your first reaction seeing like people's reactions to those moments?
Because there's a part of me that's very voyeuristic, meaning I understand how I feel, but I like to shut that off, and I'm more deeply interested in what other people are enjoying, because some of it I get and some of it I don't. And for me, those moments, I was just thinking the timeline of like, oh my gosh, this movie came out 20 years ago. This movie came out, 8 years ago, that I thought, how cool would it be if these guys, because I filmmake, I'm constantly doing short films. I'm constantly going, hey, what's the emotional, like, does this actually work emotionally? Is this realistic enough for people to care? Because that in itself is a huge skill to go, hey, you film this, you film that, you film this person say this and this, it doesn't feel real. No one cares. They were able to, because you're watching as they put a movie together and you're like, wow, I really hope that they can nail this in a way that's not, oh, I hope it's successful. No, meaningfulness is entirely different than success. What means a lot to you, if you ever watch, people do this to me all the time. For instance, and I'll make this a quick example and then I'll jump back in, but for me, the two Bellman movie that should be getting greenlit, right? They're just going, hey, William, so basically, this guy wants to star in this movie, and he'll basically put up all the money, but we need someone in this movie that is bigger than you to sell our US market on. Mm-hmm. So these years, proving myself as a stuntman and a filmmaker and an actor and all those things. And so we have this deal that's supposed to be going forward with two Bellman, where I can kind of be one of the leads in this movie, and they swap out and use this other guy who wants to pay for the movie, and then also will bring the funding to do it. Yeah. But they said this to me the other day. They're like, yeah, William, it's cool. We need someone who's like has a name, who's already marketable in the US to sell this movie. And what's funny about that, the reason why I bring that up is because this guy has tried this before, and I'm not even going to mention the movie. I'm not even going to mention who it was, but he's tried this exact thing. Guy from the East, comedian guy in a movie together with a great director, a director that you've heard of for sure. Movie didn't do well at all. So it just makes me laugh that people want to go, all right, A plus B equals a good movie. You have babes and you have action. My point of that is, I think what's really cool is that the emotional awareness and the emotional IQ surrounding what people will love is different than simple math of there's babes, there's tough guys, and there's fighting. You're like, sure, if you think that's going to sell your movie, but just so you know, try that as much as you want. But what people love is something entirely different. Like when you watch those three guys together and you go, man, each of these guys has their own storyline, yet they're like loving and cool and nice to each other. They're all heroes, but they're also nice. You love it. You don't like it. You love those Spider-Man together. So I think that lesson needs to be taught more. That's like, sure, you can be as marketable as you want. Doesn't mean your movie's going to sell, because art isn't math. It just never will be. You can make movies about math, but it's still just art. I'm sorry. And so hopefully at some point someone will realize that, like they did, because No Way Home was an incredibly like emotionally aware movie, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I think like with that being said, it's like, because obviously like, you know, you always hear nostalgia sells, but another thing is when it's done right and you do justice to the characters. And I think with that film, they did such a great job of making every character feel important and also not letting it just be a nostalgic thing. Like you felt every second and every moment. The writing too for each character was brilliant. I think they just did such a good job, man.
Yeah, and it was up to date, is I think what you're saying. Because you could have just done like, here they are. Look, here's the exact scene they were in when you saw them last. They were like, no, they fast forwarded in time, and this is what means something to them right now. I think that's cool. You know, it's really good writing.
Because you always seen too, like you've seen these different multiverse movies too, and they can be there for just like a pop in a sense, you know. And you can see the difference when it's done right and when it's done out of just to sell tickets. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was brilliant, man, how they did that. And I just like last question for you. Obviously, we had a great interview. You know, I want to thank you again for taking the time to do this. And it was very interesting and insightful and inspiring to hear your story and hear how you got to where you're at. And the last question I guess I would say is like, what's one thing that means the most to you and what keeps you going?
I think what means the most to me is kind of what we started out with, is that I just desperately want to make movies and want to make, I mean, here's the thing. Movies is such a broad term. Wanting to make content, wanting to make whatever that makes people on a Monday morning when they go back to work and they're like, all right, here we go again. I work at a factory. Like, what about today can take my mind away from that? What about today can be awesome beyond that? What about today that I can quote all day long? That's going to make me laugh with my friends, right? That I think that's what keeps me going, is because for me, I've been out here in Los Angeles a long time. And have I reached all of my goals? No. Are my goals really high? Sure. Are they realistic? I don't know. That's right. That's not the point of having goals, I guess. But for me, I just kind of, what keeps me really going is that I want to make that thing when people on Monday morning are like, dude, that was so sick. I cannot wait to watch that again. That is classic. Because it becomes culturally like, how many times, and I don't, and this is such an old reference, but people do this all the time. Like, man, that dude looks like Weekend at Bernie's. You're like, that is hilarious. Because in that movie, they're trying to, you know how they're like carrying a dead body around?
That moment,
that culturally, whatever that means, those short, sweet jokes that you're like, that you have with your friends, it's just the Chris Farleys of the world and people like that. It's like, dude, Kate McKinnon, I mean, just newer, like Will Ferrell in so many ways are just, that's what keeps me going, because the actual intimidation factor of being like, yeah, it's time to be an actor. It's time to go and act in this big movie. It's time to star in all those things. are feel very scary and foreign to me. But what doesn't feel foreign at all is you're like, remember in Ace Ventura when he does this? You're like, I do. Like that's
Yep.
what feels good to me, and that's what keeps me inspired to make movies. Because I think everyone, obviously, they're like, I hope I'm in an iconic movie, but what people are sort of seeking from that, I hope everyone respects me, but I don't. I want people like what I make. I want people to love it, and then love it so much they enjoy it and they think about it because it's just making their day better. And however you amalgamate that, so like extreme success, I don't care so much about that. I
Yeah.
just want to make those movies like Bruce Campbell makes, where you're like,
Yeah.
that's a B movie and you have a chainsaw on your hand and we love it, you
Yep.
know? So that's sort of what's keeping me going with, because in Los Angeles a lot, there are so many people right now, like I said, that are incredible. They're incredible actors, they're incredible athletes, they're incredible everything. And the opportunity per talent and who gets to the audition and who they decide. Because there's a lot of people, like I did this audition the other day for something that I felt good about. It was a commercial and I was like, wow, this is really funny. And I've been practicing so much myself lately
Yeah.
that even in auditions and stuff, I don't really get super nervous anymore. I just kind of go, yeah, oh, like I'll get nervous if I can't remember something, but that's about it. But even in that stuff, it could just be I did the most incredible. They're like, wow, that dude freaking, like, I don't even know. He could have won an Oscar. And if you don't look like the person the director saw as a kid, they go, oh, there's this really funny kid in my class. If you don't look like that person that the director needs to pick, you can be incredible and
Yeah.
no one is ever going to. So I think what really keeps me going too is to be that good, just like a sniper, and wait for the exact moment to hit the target that you need. Because like I said, there's thousands of people around here in Los Angeles right
Yep.
now that crush it, and you're never going to get to see them in a movie. And I really get sad about that you're like, dude, I just saw your stand up. You're hilarious. No one has heard of you. How is this happening? That I don't want that to be me.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want that. I don't want to go, wow, I worked my whole life to build up all this skill, all this stuff that other people have never practiced, never thought of. I've invented all these tricks, right? I've
Yeah.
invented all these things. And more than anything, I just don't want it to go into obscurity after I've worked that hard on it. So that's also what keeps me going, is finding the opportunity where I actually get to showcase it, or making the other opportunity by writing it myself, this perfect character, like Bruce Almighty, or one of those
Yeah.
characters like Liar Liar, where this existential things, or this thing's happening to you and you can't explain it, so you can do all the physical comedy. So that's what I'm trying to sort of, bring to fruition. Because like I said, there's a lot of people like, I just want to be a star. I do not want to be a star. I want to make movies that you love. I want to
Yeah.
make movies
Yeah.
that you just love. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad it exists, because I finally relate to somebody. Because when I watched Edward Scissorhands, I was like, why do I relate so well to that? That's awkward, right? But that's
Yeah.
the point, is somebody's like that. And it's cool to connect people that are weird, or the outsiders
Yeah.
that just don't feel normal, and then they have their movie, like Fifth Element, where you're like, French people made that and they're geniuses apparently. Like, how
Yeah.
you watch the Fifth Element, and I know these are all older references, but do yourself a favor, anyone listening, go watch them.
Yeah.
Go watch
100%,
them,
man.
because I think you'll find in there that there's a lot of like quirkiness and stuff that I really relate to, and I just want to be that for other people like younger than me that are
We
like,
show them.
dude,
Yeah.
I feel so weird. Can someone just make me feel a little bit better about it? And I would love to be that person.
100%, man. I think
So
too, when I was in high school too, like I grew up like a very shy kid too, and it was just, I don't know, it was just like an outsider thing too, but I just gravitated towards superheroes. And obviously I was like a really skinny kid too, so it was hard for me to kind of open up and stuff and find that comfortability to be a little bit more outside. I didn't grow into that until obviously like when I became an adult and stuff, it takes
sure.
time for those things. So I think
Yeah.
hearing that story of yours and seeing that there's other avenues you can go towards if you feel that's what caters for you, I thought it was brilliant, and I'm thank you for that, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, dude, you're welcome. Yeah. Thanks for the interview. I think it's always, for me, I'm a little shy to sort of hit people up about stuff, but I do think if you ask me, I definitely feel good about trying to represent other sides of things, that people feel like a lot of what I'm saying, there's a bunch of people around me that feel it, that either don't take the time to articulate it or can't in some way, or their intelligence level and their communication skills are just kind of like off from each other, where they can get there. They could
Yeah.
figure out how to say it, but they just haven't yet. So I try to be the spokesperson for what people are feeling but can't say yet. And so that's kind of why in a lot of those stories, I'm giving you sort of waves of perspective underneath of all the things you're thinking about actors and stunt people and entertainers and whatever. You're thinking in all these like broad layers of it. And I like to represent the like insecure version, the secure I like to do all that so that anybody who's listening can kind of go, okay, that's cool. Like that part doesn't speak to me, but this other part, you make sense, because a lot of how I feel about my job doesn't make sense. And where I am, like if you were to interview me and interview people at my same level, position, whatever else, you'll get a lot of the same answers, because people are worried about saying the wrong thing, because more than anything, people want to protect their job. They don't want to be the guy that says too much. And sometimes in stunt work, people, and I've had people do it to me where they go, hey, that rehearsal footage you put online, I'm not sure we should do that. We signed the NDA or whatever else. And they go, hey, can you take my name off of that? Or,
They're worried about their jobs and stuff.
Yeah. And they'll be like, yeah, I don't. And I'm like, okay. But for me, that's just that's the hardest thing. And then I will let you go. But the hardest thing with stunt work is that part of you gives your life, like a bunch of life years to projects. And a lot of times you're not able to talk about it or really celebrate it. But then you'll see like the actor and like they'll have this huge interview. I'll show you. So I have a stunt reel of all my Spider-Man stuff. It's like 10 minutes right now.
Oh, really? That's sick.
End to end, all the photos, all the press stuff, all the tours, all the movies, a lot of rehearsal stuff, right? I just smashed it on there. But it's crazy how even in all that a lot of times, people will just cut their stunt reel up because they go, well, this little part of running is me, this little part of a fall is me, this way, and they don't put the actor in there. So the action is kind of cut up in a way that you're like, so you're on the counter, then you're and it's hard to follow. I don't do that. Like in this reel, you're going to be like, okay, I see you jump up there. I see Andrew's face. I see you fall. I see where they're going, wait, you're using the actor as part of your stunt reel? You can only use your stunts. You're like, he's pretending to be me. You think I'm not going to pretend to be him?
Yeah.
But I'm saying that right now, you're gonna be like, yes, William, that makes perfect sense. Anybody else you ask, they're gonna be like, yeah, it's a little shady with the, you don't want to be taking credit for what you're not doing. You're like, tell the actor that.
Yeah.
Tell the actor that. So for me, when you watch this reel, you'll see shots of Andrew's face or whatever spliced in there that I'm like, yeah, that's because it's completing my sequence to show off what I did, and without it, it doesn't make sense. Just like if you take out all my stunts, he's then just running down a hallway.
Yeah. So what's the point then?
Yeah. So in my realm, the reason why I'm representing and I'm pushing further into social media and stuff, that other stunt doubles are like, oh, I want to keep my job. And a lot of times people won't even tell you, your bosses, the stunt coordinator, the second unit, whoever you're working for, they won't tell you not to do it. They obviously tell you to do it after the movie is out, whatever else. People will launch their stuff, but they'll never, because you sign NDAs about it. But once it's out, they'll have all this behind the scenes stuff that's showing basically the footage that you had. But because the studio releases it, right, then it's okay. But for me, if you want stunts to be more important and not invisible, then you have to represent what's actually happening. Well, no, that's all part of the magic of it, because if stuntmen, if we can see the stunts, then we know the character's not real. You're like, that makes, okay, well, hang on. This guy is saying, watch out, everybody down, shooting. Just so you know, there aren't real bullets in that gun, for starters. Second, he's not really a cop. So for you to say, hey, the fantasy is only on this side, we pretend like this guy is the lead, but you're not. You're like, Liam Neeson is like in his later years. He's lucky to not be in a wheelchair. I don't think we're all believing that he's also falling downstairs fighting people. I'm sorry. I don't. So anyway, but here's the thing, without putting any angst into it that's unnecessary or any anger around, because it's all a good job, right? It's a good job. It's great. It's plush. If you do it, you play your cards right. It's just interesting because the bottom line of that is, you guys aren't important at all. Just show up.
Which is stupid.
Pads, be in a warehouse somewhere. Okay, we really, really need you for the sequence. Okay, now get out. that not being treated in a certain way for me, that's why representing or showing that footage of all the behind the scenes to show that it is important, that I'm
Yep.
important doing
Those
it,
little things
that
make
it's
a
part of the
difference.
thing. Yeah, we're making this whole picture, and to say that this side of the picture is more important than this side just doesn't work anymore. And so
Yeah.
that's why, while I am taking the risk, there's a lot of people who are in my position who won't show behind the scenes footage. They won't talk about it. They won't do the whatever. But for me, once it's over, the illusion of it is obviously gone, because we
Yeah.
all know that Spider-Man, like Andrew Garfield, can't climb walls, and nor can I.
Yeah.
Right. And if between the two of us, who could actually climb a wall, it turns out it's me. Right. So if I
Yeah.
want to talk about me climbing a wall and him not caring about wanting to climb a wall, then that's okay, because the truth is that Spider-Man movie is over here and it's awesome.
Yep.
We're not children. We understand that it's fake. So to
Yeah.
say that this part, yeah, but this part being fake, that's okay. This part can't tell about this. It's just unequal. So that's why for me, creating balance for me is talking about that stuff, doing the interviews about telling you the inside track of how I felt about it, what happened
Yeah.
with it, whatever. Because the truth is you, without it, you can't make a movie. And if you can, the CG movie that you make, if you notice, people are like, yeah, CG is cool. But when you really see someone do something, like I say this every time I interview, I want you to think about the X Games. I want you to think about all the guys
Yep.
flying off jumps with dirt bikes. Okay, so this year we want to keep everybody safe, so we're just going to go ahead and CG those guys off the ramps. Well, no, they're not. No, they're going to ride up to the ramps and they're going to wave to the audience, but then we're going to stop and then we're going to do a cartoon version. We'll just green screen some stuff and then we'll do. You'd be like, this is nuts. What did I pay for?
Yeah.
Why am I even in
100%.
this arena? No one's going to do anything. You're like, that's right. That's right. The truth is, you can do whatever you want. You watch a real person fall downstairs, and it's somewhere in your heart. You're like, oh God, right?
Yeah.
So to keep that around and to make sure that it stays relatable in movies, that's not even me trying to keep my job. That's just going, you can do whatever you want. But if you watch someone right now run into that door, you're gonna pay attention. So you tell me how much of it
There's
we
a big
need and
difference
how
when it
much.
comes to that.
Yeah, how much do we need? How much do we not need? You tell me. But I know that that's a cartoon, so cool, I guess. But that's why it's such a big deal in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, is because all that stuff is real.
There was no
They took
CG work at all, right? Like for the most part,
yeah,
besides the
sure.
lizard.
I mean,
But
they overlayered some stuff. They put
yeah.
CG on top, but mostly all, and it's just really cool that people are capable of that if they really want to be. And that's the reason why you're like, well, that's just time and money and extra money. We could have made a cartoon, sure, but you also don't invent anything when you do CG. You just
No,
make a
exactly.
cartoon of what physics should be. But if you really look at it, advancing and figuring out how physics works in real life to make a movie, I'm sorry, but you're still advancing science in that way. You really are. You
Yeah.
just, whether you like it or not, you are. So take that benefit or don't take that benefit, depending on how much money you have, you know?
Oh,
So,
definitely. I actually have like a couple more questions I'll ask you quickly. Before you leave, obviously, I was gonna say like for me, my favorite film when it came to the Spider-Man series, when it comes down to the action wise, even the CGI I think was probably the Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think it had the best web slinging action sequence, like when it comes to the storytelling behind it. Um
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think yeah, I would say like that was probably my favorite. Do you have any like scene from those films that you would say like was one of your favorites in terms of the action scene? Sorry.
Yeah. I think, it's interesting. I have a little bit of extra appreciation for it, both because I'm a fan of Ilram
Yeah.
and also because I was hired last on that movie, right?
Yeah.
But I really like the sequence where he's swinging back and forth under the bridge.
Yeah.
Not the low. So there's one where they did two versions. They did where he's swinging super high. As soon as he swings underneath the bridge and he starts swinging down the road, there's the really high, wide one. There's another one where he's behind the truck and he's being puppeted. And then at
Yeah.
some point, the way that Ilram swung in those scenes, like I didn't get to do it because I was hired last and they had rehearsed that much. Now I went to New York and I ended up rehearsing with him. And could I do it? Sure. But they chose him too because they said, oh, this is his specialty, this is whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, when I watch him do that, and since then I've done a lot of swings and a lot of other things and I've understood it. But at that time period, I just thought it was really beautiful that that he practiced enough that his body language was really right for the swing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Swinging, grabbing, swing. I just thought he did it really beautifully, And I think that sequence by itself, the fact that Andy and those guys, and they show it behind the scenes, but they made a long truck where they could just hang you, and then you have guys on either side pulling you, and you could regenerate a swing as long as you like do it at the right time and put your web out. And I just think there's something incredible about being clever enough to make something like that that's repeatable. You can fly down, you can do it right as long as you're facing out and looking at Spider-Man. You can shoot it all day. He could have done that swing for 2 miles. And I think there's just something incredible about Andy Armstrong and the team figuring that out and going, what are the physics with this? How do we fit? Because Andy, like I said, he's very old school. He's a huge Buster Keaton fan.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was able to nail that down, and of course, Ilram played his part, David played his part, all those guys are figuring out the physics of how a body works. Jacob Hudo, he was doing, giants, trying to figure out like how your body swung. That it's just cool, like I said, the physics of that, where if they ever go, hey, let's do another Spider-Man movie where he's swinging, we know exactly how to do it. Yeah. Like, no, we know exactly, like you could do it now where there's big Mack trucks and we can time it so that he can be swinging and swing out of the way of a truck if he wants to.
Yeah.
Like, I think about this all the time. And if you said, hey, just imagine in your mind if Christopher Nolan made a Spider-Man movie, it would be real, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think in my mind, the fantasy version is Andy Armstrong and Christopher Nolan making that Spider-Man movie. I just think it would be, would it be scary to do the stunts for? You betcha. I would be terrified of it.
Yeah,
but
100%.
Also, when you watch it later, people would be like, wow, I was grabbing onto the seat in a theater. I'm pretty sure there's still an imprint of my hand. But that's because you feel it. Like, you remember in The Dark Knight or whatever, when he rips the wings off the airplane midair? Crazy. Tell me you don't think about that, because that's one of a kind. There's been 1,000 CG planes crashing, hitting a building, other building, and you're like,
nothing hits the same like an actual scene like that. Like, there's a difference.
Yeah. So I think it's just cool that Andy has the experience. His older brother Vic, obviously those guys have enough clout within stunt world, second unit directing or whatever, that people trusted them to be like, hey, this might cost more money, but this is what I want. I want a man really swinging down the street, and they're like, all right, cool, we'll make it. And they did. It looks
and
great.
It was incredible. It was amazing to see that. It was just perfect how they did it too. Camera angles. And I think obviously I overheard that they built like their own New York City to film that film, right? Like, it was like for the first one.
So for the first one, they're basically at the back lot of Universal. There was a New York street where we filmed quite a bit of stuff on, but that sequence, like going down the street, is in New York City under that bridge.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, it was a live street. All those people driving underneath them were stunt cars and like super special background, like deep background cars that weren't going to go all the way through. All those are stunt people driving underneath. Yeah. If you watch the sequence again, we took over that bridge for a while, just shut it down. And yeah, dude, because if you look at that bridge, it's beautiful, where you're not going to find that bridge anywhere else.
Yeah.
But in the second movie, we recreated Times Square out in Long Island.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
For some of those scenes. Yeah.
That was incredible, man. Okay, so last question for you. Out of all the Spider-Man films, which one is your favorite? If you had to choose one.
Is Dr. Octopus in the second Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard, dude, because between that and I haven't, you know what? This is embarrassing to say. The newest Spider-Verse movie I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
But the original, that one's so good too.
It's the Spider-Verse, yep.
It's so hard with that stuff because I've been such a fan for so long that for me, picking a favorite is almost being, how do you say that? Picking a favorite is almost being unfair to the character at all, because when I was a kid and that Tobey Maguire one came out, I was thinking, thank God Spider-Man's on the big screen.
Yep.
And every iteration after that, I'm just thinking, okay, thank God he has a place in cinema. I never am like so-and-so. But I'm also, if you look how, like, if you watch, I'm much more into creativity than I am into longest, highest, fastest. So I don't, and I understand in America, it's a big thing with capitalism, whatever, to be the best or to do the whatever. I don't really do that. I couldn't possibly pick because I just want Spider-Man to be on film.
You just want it to be great. That's really it, you know?
I like them all. I like each one
Yeah.
for different reasons. I don't know how you could pick if you're a Spider-Man fan.
It's tough though. That's the thing, like, because people have asked me too. Obviously, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan too, and it's just one of those things where it's like it doesn't you don't want to come off as biased, but at the same time, it's just like when you love that character so much, it's hard to just put down one because then it feels like you're disrespecting the other uh who played
Sure.
the character, you know, and
Sure.
obviously even the Miles story is so good too. Like each one has their
So
beneficial
good.
and point, you know.
Yeah. And that's why for me, it's just like, depending on how I'm feeling is how I'll pick which one I'm
Yeah.
doing. If I'm more emo, I'm definitely going Amazing Spider-Man. You know, if
Yeah.
I'm going like summertime fun, I'm going the Toby movies for
Yep.
sure. And then if I'm feeling like, all right, this is rad, I kind of want to rediscover, or I just want to feel Spider-Man in like kind of a younger universe, then I always do the Tom ones, you know, because
100%.
he's more of like a rad. That's what's cool about it. It's very high school, but like very current events, you know.
Yeah,
So,
it was brilliant how John Watts directed that. And it didn't feel out of place when he joined the Avengers, you know, like it was like the right way they did it and the right time to put him in there. There's no other time to put him. I think that was the best time they did it.
yeah, and I just love that Tom. He's lovely, by the way. He's
Yeah.
hilarious. I actually always enjoy talking to him, but he made sure to like play out and play into his own adolescence really well.
Yeah.
Meaning he's the younger guy in the whole thing, and he makes sure to be like, I don't know, this is super cool. I really like it. In that like insecurity,
Yeah.
happy, like he plays into that so well that you're like,
You
what's
feel like
not
he's a
like
high school kid, just like,
you're like, what's not likable about that? It's
yeah.
fantastic, you know? So I think that's really cool. And I think for what Andrew did, he definitely played, he's dead serious about the comic books too. So that's why he played into it in that. Because the Gwen Stacy, that version of Spider-Man one is that's a bummer situation.
Yeah.
Like, of course, So I think it's cool that you can't usually go wrong if you stay true to the source material. Even if it is depressing, a little bit on the
Yeah.
depressing side.
Oh
So
man.
yeah,
Thank you so much for this. I really am grateful for this opportunity to have you on the show. Thank you for getting so descriptive with and detailed with it because to be honest, I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about certain things, and I appreciate how detailed you were when it came to speaking on behind the scenes, how you got into stunt doubling and just
sure.
acting and stuff. Is very inspirational. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I know how that goes. Sometimes you're like, I want to talk to this person, and then you really think about communication and how people are in particular
Yeah.
situations. Certain people, if you're at their house and whatever, it's all fine. But in other situations, people's nervousness can play into kind of what they want to talk about. So I'm really glad that you and I kind of
We hit off
matched
right
up.
away, like perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, which is awesome because I never, anytime that's another thing too, and this is the last thing I'll say, but people will do this all the time. They're like, oh man, I'm just so sick of, signing autographs, or I'm so sick of these, because on Instagram, after No Way Home came out,
Yeah.
my Instagram blew up like, hey, it's so nice to, and before that, people didn't, before the multiverse, people didn't know where to put me. They're like, you're Spider-Man, but you're not really Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You're kind of helping. You're like helper Spider-Man. You're there, but you're not. And as soon as multiverse came out, it clicked in people's minds. They're like, oh, in your universe, you are Spider-Man. And
Hmm.
that's how people treated me. So it's been really crazy to like try to answer all the messages and do all the
Can
like
only imagine.
making sure. But to me, dude, it's a big deal because that's just it is like when people ask me to do stuff, though I'm hard to schedule stuff because I'm just like ADD.
Yeah.
If you can get me, I'm there because I'm super, super thankful. Like everyone that
Yeah.
unless it's just something absurd or I'm like, oh, this person might be a serial killer, I'll probably talk to you on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because the fans, without the fan, like people say this and I think they do it as lip service, but I'm not kidding. Without the fans, you don't have a career. You just
Yeah.
don't have it. There's no one to watch it. There's no one to buy it. It doesn't exist. You know what
That's
I
a
mean?
consumer right there, man.
Yeah. So, and obviously there's people on YouTube and otherwise, but still, if people aren't watching your stuff, it's not happening. So, no, I'm really thankful to do it. And I obviously, anytime I talk about that stuff, I want to be as candid as possible because I think life is a little bit too short to sort of keep up appearances. you know.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that was the biggest thing too, was when I messaged you, I didn't know, I just took a shot out there, like I obviously I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and that film, all the films in general mean a lot to me. And what you guys did to capture that moment for me, my friends, my family, and those around the world, like it was an influential moment, and that still holds close to me. And so thank you again for what you've done, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you for this opportunity, bro.
Sure, man. Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll do it again soon, don't worry.
Yeah.
Definitely do it again soon if you ever want to talk about other things too, besides.
Yeah, dude. Well, keep hitting me up, and at some point I will pull myself together.
I
Yeah.
wish you nothing but the best, man. Thank you again, and hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thank you.
Right on, dude. Thank you.